Most players beat Elden Ring by dodging, rolling, and dumping every point into vigor. They sprint past Margit with a +9 weapon, summon 3 phantoms for Radagon, and cheese Malenia with Rivers of Blood. But what if you play the entire game like a lore scholar? Picture this: walking past perfectly good weapons because your character wouldn't know about them yet, kneeling at sites of grace tied to demigod moments, waiting for dialogue to finish, refusing the Moonveil Katana, not because it's bad, but because a Tarnished guided by grace has no business wielding carrion sorcery without earning Renala's trust first. This wasn't just another playthrough. It felt like discovering an entirely new game, one from software hid in plain sight. Because here's what I realized 80 hours in. Elden Ring isn't designed to be played the way we actually play it. The optimal route: Limgrave, Liurnia, skip Caelid, rush Runny's questline, grab broken weapons, obliterate the endgame, completely ignores the story the game is screaming at you. And when you finally align your playthrough with the lore, the lands between transforms into something almost unrecognizable. The rules were simple, but brutal. 1. Only use weapons and items that make sense for my Tarnished lore, that if I haven't met the character, visited the region, or witnessed the event tied to a piece of gear, it doesn't exist. No randomly looting the meteorite staff before meeting Selen. No grabbing the golden halberd before understanding Godric's lineage. Every piece of equipment had to be earned narratively. 2. Follow the intended story path, not the optimal gameplay path. Margit hints you're underprepared? I go find Margit's shackle, because that's what the world is telling me to do. Malenia says seek the flame of ruin. I don't skip straight to Farum Azula. I go to the Mountaintops. I exhaust NPC dialogue. I let the game guide me instead of the wiki. 3. Bosses must be fought in the order that matches the lore timeline. Radagon before Morgoth. Rykard only after understanding Tanith's mission. Mob before Malenia because the Haligtree route assumes you've already explored the world. No more killing demigods out of convenience. 4. No meta builds. No cheese. No power fantasy unless the Tarnished earns it narratively that if my character hasn't trained under a master, they don't get to use advanced techniques. If they haven't proven worthy of legendary gear, they don't equip it. And if the lore says a fight should be hard, it stays hard. I wanted to experience Elden Ring the way the characters would, not the way players usually do. No more tourist playthroughs. This time, I'd live in the lands between. Doing this changed my view of Elden Ring's world, its characters, and even the shadow of the Erdtree DLC. Questlines I'd ignored suddenly became essential. Bosses I'd trivialized became emotional turning points. And mechanics I thought were bad design revealed themselves as intentional friction, the game testing whether you were truly paying attention. Let me show you how different the lands between become when lore, not min-maxing, decides your fate. I didn't pick Vagabond. I didn't pick Samurai. I picked Confessor, and immediately everything changed. Most players treat the starting class as a stat distribution template. Confessor? That's just Faith/Dex hybrid with decent armor. But when you're playing lore first, your starting class isn't a build. It's your character's entire backstory. The Confessor description reads, agents of the Two Fingers who have left their homeland to pursue a calling. That one sentence contains your motivation, your allegiance, and your tragedy. This is a spy, an intelligence operative, someone who once served the Golden Order's secret police, hunting heretics and traitors across the lands between. But something went wrong. They were exiled, or they failed, or they witnessed something that shattered their faith. Now they've returned as Tarnished, branded by grace, yes, but haunted by their past service to a church they may no longer believe in. Suddenly, the entire playthrough has dramatic tension baked in. When Malenia offers her accord, my Confessor doesn't blindly accept. They're skeptical of another divine messenger after being burned by the Two Fingers before. When they encounter the Erdtree's fundamentalist incantations, they don't use them casually. These are the tools of the regime that discarded them. Every piece of Golden Order magic is a reminder of failure. And this matters mechanically. Because if you're a former church operative, you don't just grab any weapon. You use tools of your trade: daggers for interrogation, sacred seals for inquisition rites, light armor for infiltration. The cipher pata? That's your weapon. Literally a blade of pure faith used by finger maidens and confessors. The coded sword? Off limits until you've reconciled with the Golden Order's true nature. But class alone isn't enough. You need a specific identity. I decided my confessor was Brother Aldric. Not a character from the game, but the name I gave my Tarnished to make this journey feel real. A failed agent of the Two Fingers who was exiled after questioning Marika's shattering. He didn't lose faith in the greater will. He lost faith in the church's interpretation of the greater will. He began investigating discrepancies in fundamentalist doctrine, asking why the Elden Ring shattered if the Golden Order was eternal. Why Marika, the eternal goddess, would commit treason against herself. The church silenced him, branded him Tarnished, cast him into the fog. Now, returning to the lands between, Brother Aldric's journey isn't about becoming Elden Lord for power. It's about finding the truth the Golden Order buried. That means every lore tablet matters. Every ghost dialogue is evidence. Every heretical text is a clue. This single decision altered my entire item selection philosophy. Aldric wouldn't ignore the finger reader crones. He'd interrogate them. He wouldn't skip the walking mausoleums. Those are literal monuments to Marika's secrets. And when he finds the Golden Order Principia in Leyndell, that's not just a spell book. That's the moment his entire worldview either validates or collapses. Even subtle lore details became critical. Finding the Erdtree's favor talisman, a symbol of church authority, becomes a test. Does he wear it as a sign of his past loyalty? Or leave it behind as a rejection of everything the Order represents? I chose to wear it ironically, as a reminder of the institution that betrayed him. A scar-made ornament. Forget the meta. Forget optimal DPS. Here's what Brother Aldric could actually use. Starting gear. Finger seal, his tool from Inquisition days. Broadsword, standard church militant weapon. Practical, unadorned, disciplined. Blue cloth armor, Confessor starting set. Light, functional, designed for operatives working in civilian areas. Early progression. Assassin's Crimson Dagger, found in Limgrave, fits a former spy. Beast Crest Heater Shield, found near Stormvale. A sign he's adapting, taking equipment from fallen soldiers rather than relying on church supply lines. Urgent Heal Incantation, basic Golden Order magic. He knows this by heart. What's off limits? Grafted Blade Greatsword. Aldric isn't a strength warrior. He's an investigator. Moonveil. No connection to Carrion sorcery. Wouldn't even know it exists. Rivers of Blood. Canonically, you only get this after killing its wielder, but Aldric wouldn't seek it out. Blasphemous Blade. This is heresy incarnate. Early game Aldric would be horrified. The rule was simple. If my Tarnished hasn't met the person, visited the place, or witnessed the event tied to a weapon, it doesn't exist yet. That meant no running to grab the meteorite staff before meeting Selen. No snagging the golden halberd from the tree sentinel before understanding Godric's obsession with grafting Erdtree knights. No looting the winged scythe from the Tombsward ruins before learning about deathbirds and the Helpen. Every weapon had to be discovered narratively, not pulled from a loot guide. This created bizarre, wonderful restrictions. I couldn't dual-wield colossal weapons. Aldric is a 150-pound former priest, not a mountain of muscle. Even when I had the stats, it felt absurd to picture him swinging 2 giant crushers. 1 greatsword, maybe after extensive training. 2. Lore breaking. I avoided all heretical magic. No frenzied flame incantations until I'd met the 3 fingers. No death sorceries until I'd learned about Godwyn and the Deathroot. No blood magic until I understood Mog's dynasty. These weren't just forbidden, they were unknown. You can't use blood magic if you don't know blood magic exists. I restricted spirit ashes based on narrative access. Lone wolf ashes? Fine. Runny gives them to you. Mimic tear? Absolutely not. Not until I'd reached Nokron and understood what it even is. Using a spirit that duplicates your form before you know what it is, or where it came from felt like pulling a weapon from thin air. Even boss soul weapons had rules. I couldn't forge Godric's axe immediately after beating him. Aldric would need to study Godric's grafting techniques, understand the twisted logic behind it, before replicating the weapon. So I waited, did other content, let the world breathe. Within 20 minutes, I realized this playthrough would be harder, but way more meaningful. Standing in Limgrave, watching the Tree Sentinel patrol, I knew I couldn't fight him yet. Not because I'd come back later when I'm stronger, but because Brother Aldric, newly returned from death, wouldn't pick a fight with a consecrated knight of the Erd Tree. Not yet. Not before understanding what's happened to the order he once served. Instead, I explored. I talked to merchants. I read every item description. I followed the guidance of grace like a pilgrim, not a speedrunner. And when I finally stood before Margit, underleveled and under-equipped by normal standards, something clicked. This is what the game wanted all along. Not optimization. Immersion. You are maidenless. Every player knows the line. It's a meme, a screenshot, a joke about being rejected before the game even starts. But when you're playing lore first, White Mask Var isn't comic relief. He's the game's first villain. Brother Aldric approaches the first step, fresh from the stranded graveyard, guided by grace toward the lands between proper. And there's Var, impeccably dressed, unsettlingly polite, already knowing things about you he shouldn't. He doesn't ask if you have a maiden. He states it as fact, like he's been watching, waiting. I can play the role of maiden, he offers. Too quickly, too eagerly. This isn't helpful banter. This is grooming. I stopped and actually read his dialogue with fresh eyes. Var works for Mog, the Lord of Blood, architect of a blasphemous dynasty built on kidnapping, blood sacrifice, and corrupting Miquella himself. Var isn't some random NPC offering tutorial advice. He's a recruiter for a blood cult, positioned at the game's literal starting point to catch vulnerable Tarnished before they form other allegiances. He calls Marika a trollop, calls the Two Fingers shriveled. He's actively trying to break your faith in the Golden Order within the first 2 minutes of gameplay. And if you follow his quest line, he hands you festering bloody fingers, asks you to invade and kill other Tarnished, then literally soaks a cloth in a maiden's blood as your initiation rite. For Brother Aldric, a former Confessor, already questioning the Golden Order but not ready to embrace blood heresy. This encounter is foundational. Var represents the opposite extreme, rejecting the Erd Tree entirely, serving something older and darker. And the fact that he's here at the very start means Mog's influence has already spread this far. I marked Var's location on my mental map. This wasn't someone to dismiss. This was someone to investigate. And when I eventually found the blood-soaked region of Mowin Palace, hidden beneath the lands between like a festering wound, Var's opening speech made sickening sense. He wasn't trolling me. He was warning me. The Golden Order is dead. Marika is imprisoned. The Two Fingers are silent. And there are new powers rising. Powers that don't care about your grace or your prophecy. Approaching Stormvale Castle, as Brother Aldric felt like walking into a mass grave. Because that's what it is. Every soldier in Stormvale tells the same story. These aren't elite knights or loyal retainers. Look at them. Grafted scions, abominations stitched from stolen body parts. Exiled soldiers wearing mismatched armor. Commoners forced into service, given rusted weapons and rotten wooden shields. Stormvale isn't a fortress. It's a labor camp with Godric as the warden, desperately conscripting anyone who can hold a spear. The items you find reinforce this. Pickled turtleneck, found in the kitchen, a stamina-boosting meal. But read the description. It mentions these were eaten to excess by the old king's soldiers. These aren't warriors. These are exhausted laborers, eating whatever they can to survive another day of Godric's paranoid expansion projects. Rune Arc, hidden in a storeroom, a crystallized fragment of the Elden Ring's power, hoarded by Godric. He's not using these for his soldiers. He's keeping them from his soldiers, stockpiling power while his people starve. Marred leather shield, carried by commoner soldiers, the description reads, leather shield marred by burns and cuts. These aren't standard issue. These are damaged, hand-me-down shields given to people who aren't expected to survive. Walking through Stormvile's courtyards, past piles of corpses grafted into flesh golems, I realized Godric isn't defending this castle. He's hiding in it. Every grotesque defender is a monument to his desperation. The grafting isn't power, it's parasitism. He's literally stapling other people's strength onto himself because he has none of his own, and the environmental storytelling confirms it. The castle is rotting. Barrels of explosives are scattered randomly. Dangerous, unstable, a sign of hasty fortification. The paintings of noble lineages are torn and defaced. Even the rooms meant for luxury, banquet halls, chapels, galleries, are repurposed into garrison bunkers. This is a demigod in freefall, clinging to a title he was never worthy of. I didn't summon Nephili Lu for the fight, not because she wouldn't help, but because Brother Aldric, at this moment in his journey, doesn't trust warriors of the Round Table Hold yet. He barely trusts himself. And more importantly, this confrontation needs to be personal. Godric the Grafted, a demigod, a shardbearer, descendant of Queen Marika herself. And what does he scream as the fight begins? I'm the lord of all that is golden. It's pathetic. He's not. He knows he's not. His entire title is borrowed. The golden isn't a name, it's a desperate claim to legitimacy. He grafted a dragon's head onto his arm mid-fight because his own body isn't enough. Even his great rune is described as sullied and soiled, a corrupted fragment of the Elden Ring that barely functions. But here's what shattered me. I was winning. Goddard's health was low. He was limping, screaming, flailing with his grafted monstrosities. And in that moment, I didn't see a boss. I saw someone's grandfather, some distant branch of Marika's family tree who was supposed to inherit glory but got nothing. A runt of demigods, mocked by his siblings, fleeing from Melania's invasion in women's clothing, according to Kenneth Haight. His boss arena is literally called the Secluded Cell. Not a throne room, not a grand hall, a cell. He locked himself in here, surrounded by his grafted trophies, pretending he's still relevant while the world outside collapses. When he died, his great rune shattered further. No triumphant cutscene, no dramatic monologue, just a broken old demigod, crumbling into nothing, having achieved absolutely zero of what he thought he deserved. For the first time, I felt bad killing a shardbearer, because Godric isn't the villain of Stormvale. He's the victim of the shattering, a desperate, talentless heir trying to become something he was never meant to be. His soldiers didn't die for honor. They died because Godric needed parts. And as Brother Aldric stood over the corpse, holding Godric's great rune, the weight of it hit me. This is what the shattering did. It didn't just break the Elden Ring. It broke everyone, turned demigods into tyrants, kingdoms into graveyards, glory into horror. If this was just the first shardbearer, what would the others reveal? Brother Aldric didn't arrive at Leyndell because a glowing line on the map told him to go there. He arrived because every single thread of evidence pointed to the capital as the epicenter of the conspiracy he was investigating. Melina's cryptic warnings about Queen Marika, the Finger Reader's insistence that the Erdtree denies you, Gideon Ofnir's calculated political neutrality. Even Enia, the Finger Reader the Round Table Hold, kept redirecting every question back to Leyndell. Seek the Erdtree, Tarnished. Seek an audience with Queen Marika. But no one would say why Marika shattered the Elden Ring. No one would explain why the two fingers stopped responding. And no one, not even the so-called all-knowing, seemed willing to discuss what actually happened in the capital the night the Golden Order collapsed. So Aldric didn't sprint to Leyndell for boss souls or loot. He went there as an investigator returning to the crime scene. Every side quest became a deposition. Every NPC a potential witness. Korn the Gold Mask Scholar? Not just a side character, a fundamentalist theologian whose research might expose contradictions in Golden Order doctrine. Brother Korn's pilgrimage to the capital wasn't sightseeing. It was evidence gathering. Latenna's plea to find the Haligtree? not a fetch quest. It was a lead on Miquella, the Empyrean who rejected the Golden Order entirely and tried to grow his own Erdtree. If Miquella abandoned Marika's religion, what did he know that the Church was hiding? Even Rhea's request to retrieve her necklace became geopolitically significant when I realized she worked for Volcano Manor, a heretical faction actively recruiting Tarnished to assassinate other Tarnished. Why? Who benefits from fewer Elden Lords? Who wants the status quo preserved? By the time I reached the outer walls of Leyndell, I wasn't playing an action RPG anymore. I was playing a political thriller where every faction had something to hide. The first Leyndell knight I encountered didn't attack immediately. He waited, stood at attention, only raised his halberd when I stepped past a certain threshold into the city proper. That's when it clicked. These aren't hostile mobs. They're military police enforcing martial law. The Leyndell knights aren't bandits or corrupted soldiers. Their armor is pristine. Their weapons are masterwork. Their discipline is absolute. These are elite loyalists still following orders in a city where no one is giving orders anymore. They're guarding a capital with no government, protecting an Erdtree that won't let anyone inside, serving a queen who's been imprisoned in the Erdtree for years. And yet they don't leave. Compare that to Godric's desperate conscripts or Raya Licaria's brainwashed sorcerers. The Leyndell knights aren't corrupted. They're faithful, and that makes them terrifying because faith without leadership becomes fanaticism. The Crucible Knights are even worse or better, depending on your perspective. These ancient warriors predate the Golden Order, serving an older, wilder version of the Erdtree before Marika purified it. They're walking proof that the Golden Order rewrote history. And yet some still serve, like Siluria in Deeproot Depths or Ordovis in Ariza. Why? Because they swore an oath. And unlike the demigods, unlike Marika herself, the Crucible Knights don't break their oaths. The Tree Sentinels, those golden armored giants on horseback, are even more tragic. Read their armor description. Sentinels who protect minor Erdtrees. Not the Erdtree. Minor Erdtrees, meaning they're deployed across the lands between as symbols of divine authority, standing vigil over saplings that will never grow, waiting for orders from a goddess who will never speak. They're not bosses. They're abandoned clergy, still praying at altars no one visits anymore. Playing as Brother Aldric in Leyndell meant restricting my entire toolkit based on political optics. No fire-based attacks. Fire is the flame of ruin, the one power that can burn the Erdtree. Using fire incantations in the capital, the holiest city in the lands between, would be like waving a torch inside a cathedral. Even the fire monks were banished for guarding the flame. Aldric wouldn't risk being mistaken for a heretic, not while he needed access to the city's archives. No death sorceries. Death, true death, the kind that predates the Erdtree's immortality, is the Golden Order's greatest taboo. Using death blight or death magic in Leyndell would instantly mark you as an agent of Godwyn's conspirators, or worse, the Duskborn ending fanatics. No frenzy incantations. The frenzied flame represents cosmic nihilism, the complete rejection of the Greater Will's order. There's literally a church inquisition in Leyndell hunting frenzied flame merchants. Using those powers would be suicide. Even my weapon choices mattered. The blasphemous blade? Absolutely forbidden. It's made from Rykard's soul, a demigod who literally fed champions to a serpent god. Carrying that into Leyndell would be like walking into the Vatican holding a pentagram. So Aldric used Sacred Blade, Ash of War, Golden Vow incantations, Erdtree blessings, all approve holy magic. He played the part of a reformed confessor, someone seeking redemption and answers, not rebellion. It meant weaker damage, fewer tactical options, but it meant survival. Because Leyndell isn't a dungeon, it's an authoritarian theocracy, and you're walking through it as a known heretic. Every street corner had her statues. Every cathedral displayed her hammer. Every knight wore her golden seal. But the longer I explored, the more oppressive it became. Because Marika isn't worshipped in Leyndell. She's weaponized. The statues aren't devotional, they're surveillance. Positioned at intersections, choke points, major thoroughfares. Always watching. The banners aren't decorative. Their propaganda, reinforcing divine authority in a city where that authority has completely collapsed. Even the architecture is designed to overwhelm. Golden spires, impossibly tall ramparts, cathedrals so massive they dwarf human scale. This isn't a city. It's a monument to control. And then I found the jails, the shunning grounds, the subterranean nightmare beneath the capital where omens, Morgoth's people, are imprisoned, tortured, and left to rot. The royal capital isn't just decaying. It's built on a foundation of genocide. Leyndell stopped feeling like a dungeon and started feeling like pre-collapse East Berlin, a totalitarian state where the propaganda is still running, but the government has already fled. I walked into Morgoth's arena expecting another Godric, a false king, a pretender, someone clinging to power they didn't earn. Instead, I found a most loyal son in the entire game. Morgoth the Omen King, born cursed, imprisoned as a child, rejected by his goddess mother, hunted by his own city's inquisitors. And yet when every other demigod abandoned Leyndell, when Runni killed her body, when Rykard fed himself to a serpent, when Melania marched to war and Radagon went mad and Godric fled in women's clothing, Morgoth stayed. He didn't want the throne. He calls himself the Veiled Monarch, refusing even to show his face. His great rune is a curse that drains health, not a blessing. And yet he guards the Tree, fights off Tarnished, kills fellow shardbearers who threaten the capital. Why? Because someone has to. Because the Golden Order, the same order that branded him a monster, is still the order. And without order, there's only chaos. When he died, his last words were, "We are all forsaken." Not anger, not defiance, just exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who gave everything to a system that hated him, knowing it was doomed, doing it anyway because someone had to believe. I didn't feel victorious. I felt like I just executed the last honest man in the lands between. Most players see the consecrated snowfield and think, oh, in-game area. Time to grab the Haligtree medallion. Brother Aldric saw a war crime preserve in ice. Because the Mountaintops of the Giants isn't a snowy region or a high-level zone. It's the site of the Golden Order's first and greatest act of genocide, the systematic extermination of an entire civilization because they guarded the one flame that could burn the Tree. Every item description confirms it. The flame of the fell god, the giant's deity, was deemed heretical not because it was evil, but because it was strategically dangerous. Marika needed the Tree to be eternal, unchallengeable, the only source of divine power in the lands between. The fire giant's flame represented an alternative, a threat, a way to end the Golden Order. So she sent Godfrey, her consort, her Elden Lord, her greatest warrior, to exterminate them. Not defeat, not conquer, exterminate. And he succeeded. Walking through the mountaintops, you see the evidence everywhere. Giant skeletons half buried in snowdrifts, still clutching weapons. Frost trolls, the giants' cousins, reduced to enslaved labor, chains embedded in their flesh. The fire monks, once guardians of the flame, now hunting their own god to prevent its resurgence, driven mad by conflicting orders. Even the troll caravan, those massive wagons pulled by enslaved trolls, tells a story. Read the smithing stone description found near them, stone used by the giants to craft weapons in an age before the Tree. These caravans aren't traders. They're scavengers, looting the ruins of giant civilization to fuel the Golden Order's war machine. Every enemy in the mountaintops is a victim of divine politics. The Zamor warriors, ancient heroes who fought alongside Marika in the giant war, then were abandoned when their usefulness ended. The prelates, fire monks so loyal they continued protecting the flame even after the church ordered them to extinguish it. Even the wolves and birds are just trying to survive in a frozen wasteland created by the Golden Order's Scorched Earth campaign. This isn't a level. It's a memorial to institutional evil, and you're walking through it as an agent of the same system that created it. Playing as Brother Aldric, someone investigating the Golden Order's crimes. Men, I couldn't just slaughter my way through thoughtlessly. I refused to use frost magic. not because it was ineffective, but because frost and ice are the giants' domain. Using Runni's Dark Moon sorcery or Agula's Moonblade felt like desecrating a mass grave. These people were killed, their civilization erased, their land frozen over as a monument to their defeat. And I'm supposed to weaponize that same cold against their descendants? It felt obscene. So Aldric stuck to holy incantations and sacred blade arts, the tools of the Golden Order. If he was going to fight through this region, he'd do it as what he was, a representative of the system that caused this atrocity. No hiding behind neutral magic. No pretending he wasn't complicit. I avoided farming certain enemies entirely. The Zamor warriors especially. These ancient heroes helped Marika win her war, and their reward was exile. They're not hostile out of evil. They're hostile because everyone is hostile to them now. The Golden Order used them and discarded them, and now they're trapped in the frozen wastes they helped create, fighting Tarnished who've come to loot their ruins. Killing them for rune drops felt like robbing graves. And the fire monks? The ones desperately trying to extinguish the flame of the fell god because the church commanded it, even though it's destroying their minds. I only fought them when they attacked first. Otherwise, I let them patrol. Let them continue their impossible, tragic mission. Because fighting them wasn't gameplay. It was participating in cultural erasure. When I reached the Forge of the Giants, I didn't see a boss arena. I saw an execution chamber. The fire giant. The last fire giant. Chained to a mountaintop, forced to guard the very flame his people died protecting. Waiting for someone to come kill him so the cycle can continue. Read his remembrance. The fire giant is a survivor of the war against the giants. Upon realizing the flames of their forge would never die, Queen Marika marked him with a curse. O thorn-ridden giant, guard the flame, lest it devour the world. He's not a monster. He's a prisoner of war, kept alive specifically to suffer. Marika couldn't extinguish the flame of the fell god, so she enslaved the last giant to guard it for eternity, ensuring he'd witness his people's extinction every single day. And now you, Tarnished, guided by grace, following Marika's plan, have to finish the job. The fight itself is horrific when you understand the context. The fire giant tears off his own leg to use the flame inside his body as a weapon. Not because he's powerful, because he's desperate. He's literally burning himself alive to stop you, and it's not enough. When he falls, his death coat doesn't appear. No dramatic monologue, no curse, just silence. The last giant dies, and the game doesn't even give him words. And then the flame of ruin, the flame his entire civilization died to protect, is immediately weaponized by you to burn the Erdtree. The exact catastrophe Marika feared, fulfilled by her own chosen Tarnished. The giants were exterminated to prevent this moment. And you just made their genocide meaningless. This was the point I realized the Tarnished isn't a hero. We're not saving the lands between. We're not restoring order or fixing the shattering or bringing peace. We're the final weapon of a broken world, a dead thing called back to life, aimed at the last surviving structures, programmed to destroy everything that's left so something new can grow from the ashes. Marika didn't summon the Tarnished to repair the Golden Order. She summoned us to complete its collapse. Every boss we kill, every kingdom we topple, every demigod we defeat, we're not stopping the apocalypse. We're accelerating it, finishing what the shattering started, ensuring that nothing survives. Godric, desperately clinging to relevance, dead by our hand. Morgoth, loyally defending an empty throne, dead by our hand. Melania, waiting for a brother who will never wake, dead by our hand. The fire giant, last of his people, enslaved for centuries, dead by our hand. And we call it progress. Standing at the forge, watching the flame consume the Erdtree in the distance, Brother Aldric understood. There are no heroes in the lands between, only victims, executioners, and those unlucky enough to be both. The Haligtree isn't on any map. There's no grace guiding you there. You have to earn the knowledge of its existence through Latenna's dying wish, Millicent's questline, and Gideon's paranoid warnings about Miquella's Haligtree, a place beyond the reach of the Erdtree's influence. That phrase stopped me cold, beyond the reach of the Erdtree, because that's not just geographic distance. That's theological separation. Miquella, an Empyrean, a demigod chosen by the greater will itself, rejected his mother's golden order so completely that he tried to grow an entirely new world tree. Not to conquer, not to rule, but to offer sanctuary to the one group the golden order despises most. The Omen, the Albinaurics, the Misbegotten, every impure race the church branded as monsters. The Haligtree was supposed to be a utopia for the Forsaken, and it failed. Walking through the roots, past the crystallized warriors frozen in eternal prayer, you see the truth. The tree grew wrong. It's beautiful, yes, but it's hollow. The branches are brittle. The canopy doesn't provide shelter. It collapses under its own weight. And at the heart of it all, where Miquella should be guiding his dream to fruition, there's just an empty cocoon. Because Mog stole him, kidnapped an unconscious demigod, and dragged him to the Blood Palace to force him into a new dynasty. Miquella's compassion, his desire to cure Malenia's rot, to shelter the outcasts, to build something better than his mother's theocracy, was exploited by the exact kind of predator he was trying to protect people from. The Haligtree isn't a challenge dungeon. It's a mass grave for hope. Every crystallized soldier was someone who believed. Someone who walked away from the lands between endless war, climbed an impossible tree, and prayed for a god who would never wake up. The Cleanrot Knights, Malenia's elite guard, are rotting alive from her scarlet curse, but they stayed. They didn't abandon her. They didn't flee when a rot spread. They just kept praying. And when I realized that every enemy in the Haligtree, every Cleanrot Knight, every Oracle Envoy, every Haligtree soldier, wasn't attacking me out of malice, but defending the last sanctuary in the world, I couldn't bring myself to fight aggressively anymore. These weren't invaders. I was the invader. Brother Aldric walked through the Haligtree like a pilgrim at a shrine, only fighting when necessary, kneeling at prayer rooms, reading every item description like scripture. The traveler's set worn by Millicent and her sisters, worn by travelers who set out on a long journey. They walked here, across the entire lands between, sick with rot, knowing they'd probably die, because Miquella promised a world where they wouldn't be hunted. The Haligtree isn't just sacred. It's the graveyard of the last good idea anyone in this world ever had. I didn't see a boss health bar when I entered Malenia's arena. I saw someone who hasn't slept since the shattering. Malenia, Blade of Miquella, the goddess of rot, the undefeated swordswoman. But look at her. She's missing limbs. Her prosthetics are crude, functional, held together by desperation and faith. Her armor is tarnished. Her eyes are gone, rotted away by the scarlet curse that's been devouring her since birth. And she's been sitting here, alone, waiting for her brother to wake up. For years. When she speaks, I am Malenia, Blade of Miquella. It's not a boast. It's a reminder to herself. She defines her entire existence by her loyalty to Miquella. Not as the goddess of rot, not as an Empyrean, not even as Radagon's equal. Just Miquella's protector. The fight itself became unbearable once I understood the Scarlet Bloom mechanic. When Malenia's health drops to 0, she doesn't die. She blooms, transforms into the goddess of rot. A grotesque, final evolution of the curse she's been fighting her whole life. And the items confirm it. She's bloomed twice before. Once in Caelid, nuking an entire region and reducing Radagon to a maddened husk. Once somewhere else, circumstances unknown. This moment is her third bloom. And according to the lore, the third bloom is when the rot consumes her completely. When Malenia stops being Malenia and becomes a mindless, apocalyptic plague vector. She knows this. She knows that if she blooms again, she'll never wake up, never see Miquella again, never fulfill the one purpose that kept her alive through decades of war. And she blooms anyway, because you won't stop, because she has nothing else left. The second phase isn't a power fantasy. It's watching someone commit assisted suicide by boss fight because they've run out of hope. When she died, truly died. Her last words were, "Michaela, I'm sorry." I had to pause the game. Brother Aldric knelt in the arena for a full minute. Because this wasn't victory. This was mercy killing the last guardian of a dead dream. The walk to the Erdtree's interior is silent. No music, no enemies, just ash, golden light, and the distant hum of something vast and broken. And then you see them. Radagon of the Golden Order, Marika's second husband, her consort, her other self, hammering at the Elden Ring, over and over and over, trying to repair it. Most players see this as a boss intro, but when you're playing lore first, this is the reveal that recontextualizes the entire game. Because Marika shattered the Elden Ring. That's canon. She took her hammer and destroyed the source of the Golden Order's power, an act so heretical that the Greater will imprison her inside the Erdtree and appointed Radagon, who shares her body, to undo what she did. But here's the question that Brother Aldric couldn't stop asking. Why did Radagon keep trying? Radagon is a fundamentalist, a zealot. He worships the Golden Order. His incantations, his miracles, his entire identity is built on maintaining divine law. And when Marika, his wife, his goddess, his literal other half, committed cosmic treason, the Greater will punish both of them by trapping them in the same dying body. Imagine that. Imagine being forced to share consciousness with someone whose actions you despise, locked in an eternal Erdtree prison, hammering at shattered gold for years, knowing you'll never succeed, knowing your god has abandoned you, knowing the woman you love destroyed everything you believed in, and still trying. That's not a villain. That's a tragedy in the shape of a boss fight. When I fought Radagon, every hammer swing felt like desperation. Every spell he cast, law of regression, law of causality, pure Golden Order fundamentalism, felt like a prayer to a god who stopped listening. He doesn't want to kill you. He wants you to leave, to stop disrupting his work, to let him finish the impossible task the Greater will assign him as punishment. And when he falls, when his body shatters into light, the Elden Beast emerges, not as Radagon's second phase, but as the Greater Will's final contingency. The living incarnation of the Elden Ring itself, sent to stop anyone from claiming power the gods no longer want distributed. The Elden Beast isn't evil. It's terrified. It's a god realizing its reign is over, lashing out like a dying animal, because the alternative is admitting the age of the Erdtree has ended. And you, tarnished, graceless, mortal, are the one killing it. The irony is suffocating. The Greater will called you back from death, gave you grace, guided you to this moment. And now its own avatar is trying to stop you because you were too successful. Brother Aldric stood before the shattered Elden Ring with 4 paths. 1. Age of Order, Gold Mask's Rune. Repair the Golden Order, but fix its contradictions. Remove the god's ability to meddle. Establish a cold, perfect mathematical law that even Marika can't break. This appealed to Aldric's investigator instincts. Create a system that can't be corrupted because it has no humanity left in it. 2. Age of Stars, Runni's ending. Abandon the Erdtree entirely. Let Runni remove the influence of outer gods, take the Elden Ring away from the lands between, and force mortals to live without divine intervention. Freedom at the cost of cosmic isolation. 3. Blessing of Despair, Dung Eater's Rune. Curse every living soul. Make everyone omen. Spread the suffering so universally that the categories of blessed and cursed become meaningless. It's egalitarian in the most horrific way possible. 4. Frenzied Flame. Burn it all. Reduce the lands between to ash. Melt the Erdtree. Erase the mistakes. Return everything to the primordial chaos before the Greater will impose order. The only true mercy left. Aldric chose Age of Order, not because it was happy, but because after everything, after seeing Godric's grafted horrors, Morgoth's exhausted loyalty, Malenia's rotting devotion, Radagon's eternal failure, he realized the problem wasn't the gods. It was that the gods were mortal, fallible. Marika shattered the ring because she was grieving Godwyn. The entire apocalypse happened because a mother couldn't process her son's death. So Aldric fixed the law, made it immutable, removed the human element. And as the golden light consumed him, he wondered if he'd just created a prison even worse than the one Marika tried to escape. When I first heard about Elden Ring, Nightreign, my immediate reaction as a lore player wasn't, "What's the gameplay loop?" It was, "Who are the Nightfarers, and what do they remember?" Because if you've been playing Elden Ring through a narrative lens, the Nightfarers aren't just a new player class or co-op gimmick. They're witnesses, survivors of a world that's moved beyond the shattering into something even stranger. A cyclical nightmare where the lands between resets every few nights, trapping warriors in an eternal loop. Most players will treat them like Tarnished 2.0. New characters with cool abilities, different playstyles, fun co-op synergies. But when you read their descriptions, really read them, the horror sets in. The Nightfarers aren't trying to become Elden Lord. That war is over. The Erdtree's fate has already been decided in one of the main game's endings. These characters are operating in the aftermath, in a world where the cosmic order has destabilized so completely that time itself is breaking down. Take the Wanderer class, a traveler who has seen the lands between fall and rise countless times. That's not flavor text. That's trauma. This person has lived through multiple apocalypses. They've seen the Age of Stars, the Frenzied Flame ending, the Dung Eater's Curse, maybe all of them, in different loops. They know how this story ends, and they keep fighting anyway. Or the Sentinel, a knight who serves a lord who no longer exists. Who's the lord? Morgoth? Godwyn? Godfrey? It doesn't matter. Whoever they served is gone, erased by an ending or an age or a cosmic retcon, and the Sentinel is still holding their post because that's all they have left. When you play lore first, the Nightfarers aren't power fantasies. They are ghosts, trapped in a world that won't let them rest, fighting enemies that respawn every night because the lands between itself has become purgatory. And their abilities? The way they're described as drawing power from fragments of lost kingdoms and echoes of fallen demigods. That's not just cool lore speak. That's the game confirming that the Nightfarers are literally scavenging the remains of Brother Aldric's journey. They're using Malenia's rot, Radagon's gravity magic, Runny's cold sorcery, Morgoth's cursed blade. They're fighting with the corpses of the gods we killed. Suddenly, every Nightfarer ability becomes a eulogy. When Shadow the Erdtree dropped, most players treated the Land of Shadow as bonus content. A new map, new bosses, new loot. But playing lore first revealed it as something far darker. The place where Marika buried her failures. The Land of Shadow isn't geographically separate from the lands between. It's spiritually separate, hidden by Marika herself. An entire region excised from history because it contained truths the Golden Order couldn't allow. Nightreign takes this concept even further. The areas you explore aren't just new zones. They're revenants of places that should no longer exist. Regions from alternate timelines, collapsed endings, or ages that were overwritten. You're not exploring uncharted territory. You're walking through the editing room floor of cosmic history, seeing what the Greater will try to delete. One area description mentions ruins of a capital that fell before Leyndell rose. That's not random world building. That's a reference to the civilization the Golden Order conquered and erased. Another mentions gardens where the Empyreans once played as children. Not trained, not studied, played. Meaning Marika, Malenia, Miquella, before the curse, before the war, before everything went wrong, were just kids once. These aren't add-ons. These are the missing chapters of Marika's story that the Golden Order propaganda machine deleted. And the enemies reflect this. You're not fighting random mobs. You're fighting historical figures. That Knight Captain, he served in the war against the Fire Giants. That Crucible aspect, it's a survivor from before Marika purified the Erdtree. That Sorcerer, she studied under the Carrion royal family before Radagon married Rennala. Every enemy is a footnote the Golden Order tried to burn. Playing lore first, Nightreign stops feeling like a roguelike and starts feeling like an archaeological dig through forbidden history, where every run uncovers another piece of the story Marika didn't want anyone to remember. I won't spoil the exact boss, but here's what changes when you approach Nightreign's finale through a lore lens. Most players will see the final encounter and react with shock. Wait, that's the boss? That's insane. But if you've been paying attention to the fragments, the item descriptions, the environmental storytelling, the NPC warnings throughout the run, you won't be shocked. You'll be devastated, because the final boss isn't a random challenge or a lore deep cut pulled from obscure item text. It's the logical conclusion of every thematic thread FromSoft has been weaving since Demon's Souls. The cycle of ages, the cost of ambition, the question of whether ending suffering justifies ending existence itself, the tension between fate and free will, the way every attempt to fix a broken world just breaks it differently. Nightreign's final boss is an answer to the question, what happens when the Elden Ring can no longer be repaired? Only reset. And the answer is this endless loop, this purgatory where heroes fight and die and fight again, forever, because the cosmic order is so fundamentally shattered that even entropy can't move forward. The boss isn't evil. It's not conquering or corrupting or destroying. It's maintaining, keeping the loop running, ensuring the Nightreign continues. Because from its perspective, from the perspective of an entity that exists outside the cycle, the loop is mercy. Better an eternal struggle than the frenzied flame's total annihilation. Better repetition than the cold perfection of the Age of Order. Better to let warriors fight forever than to admit the lands between are beyond saving. When you beat the final boss, you're not saving the world. You're breaking the emergency containment system that was keeping the world from collapsing entirely. And as the screen fades, as the Nightreign ends and the cycle stops, you're left with one horrifying question. Do we just make things better or worse? That ambiguity, that cosmic scale trolley problem, is only visible if you've been treating Elden Ring as a narrative, not a game. And it recontextualizes everything. The Tarnished weren't heroes. They were agents of entropy, dragged back from death by a dying god, and aimed at the last remaining structures holding reality together. Marika didn't want you to repair the Elden Ring. She wanted you to finish what she started. And in Nightreign, you finally see what happens when someone actually succeeds. Somewhere around hour 90, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't playing Elden Ring anymore. Elden Ring was playing me. The moment you let lore shape your actions, the power dynamic inverts. You stop being a player optimizing systems and become an actor inhabiting a role. Brother Aldric's choices weren't mine. They were his, based on what he'd know, what he'd believe, what his trauma and faith and desperation would allow. When I stood before the three fingers in the subterranean shunning grounds, I wanted to embrace the frenzied flame. The power was right there, the shortcut to the ending. But Aldric, former Confessor, investigator of Golden Order crimes, someone who'd spent 80 hours uncovering the truth instead of destroying it, wouldn't throw away everything he'd learned just to burn it all down. So I walked away, not because it was optimal, not because I didn't want to see that ending, but because Brother Aldric would walk away. That's not a video game decision. That's method acting. Elden Ring became a role-playing game in the most literal sense. I was playing a role, and the role was playing me back, constraining my choices, punishing my meta-knowledge, forcing me to experience the world the way the character would, not the way the player could. And once that switch flips, you can't turn it off. This wasn't a challenge run. It wasn't a no-hit run, or a level 1 run, or a beating the game with a rock-paper-scissors controller stunt. Those are impressive, but they're about the player. About skill, endurance, creativity within arbitrary constraints. This was different. This was the most authentic way to experience Elden Ring. Not as a game to be beaten, but as a world to be inhabited. A story to be lived rather than consumed. And I don't think I can go back. I tried loading up a new character yesterday. Picked Vagabond, planned a meta-strength build, rushed the Tree Sentinel, grabbed the Great Sword from Caelid, sprinted toward the Moon Veil. And I felt nothing, because now I know what the game is actually offering, and it's not loot. It's not boss souls or achievement notifications or you defeated screens. It's the chance to walk beside Melina as she questions her purpose. To kneel with Millicent as she chooses death over corruption. To stand with Blade as his programming overrides his loyalty. To watch Runny abandon her body and Fia embrace death and Goldmask discover the flaw in his god's logic. Elden Ring isn't a power fantasy. It's a grief simulator dressed as a fantasy epic, and the only way to truly experience it is to let go of control and let the lore make your choices for you. Even if those choices break your heart. Especially then. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching and listening. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.